Good morning to all the mothers out there. Happy Mother's Day. May you all have a blessed day. Our scripture reading this morning is from 1 Samuel 1, verses 1 through 8. 1 Samuel 1, starting in verse 1. There was a certain man from Ramathaim, a Zophite, from the hill country of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah, son of Jeroham, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Zuph, an Ephraimite. He had two wives. One was called Hannah, and the other Peninnah. Peninnah had children, and Hannah had none. Year after year, this man went up from his town to worship and sacrifice to the Lord Almighty at Shiloh, where Hophni and Phinehas, the two sons of Eli, were priests of the Lord. Whenever the day came for Elkanah to sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters. But to Hannah he gave a double portion because he loved her, and the Lord had closed her womb. Because the Lord had closed Hannah's womb, her rival kept provoking her in order to irritate her. This went on year after year. Whenever Hannah went up to the house of the Lord, her rival provoked her until she wept and would not eat. Her husband Elkanah would say to her, "Hannah, why are you weeping? Why don't you eat? Why are you downhearted? Don't I mean more to you than 10 sons?"
And happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. And I want to give you a little preview here of, there it is, coming attractions. This is a magazine article that got relayed to me, and with a note saying this might make a good sermon. And I read it and said, this would make a good series. So I made up a flyer for it back there. If you want to pick up one or two, if you have bulletin boards somewhere you can post them on, give them to friends. If you don't have a friend, find one. 6 things Jesus didn't die for. And we'll start that next week and invite your friends to come along to it. And as I said, we want to wish a happy Mother's Day to everybody, all the women, mothers out there, grandmothers. I know you know that the grandchildren are the reward for having children, right? That we all have, and mothers are very important. So are fathers, and maybe down the road somewhere we might look at a series about family and kind of some of the challenges that we face, although it's no secret, I think. And oh, by the way, I've got another request that I'm working on that someone left in the box back there. If you have a request about a sermon, a passage, or a Bible topic, just put it in the blue box back there. Do not have to put your name on it. Just be specific about what your question is. Don't just put in there and just say the Bible or Noah's Ark or something like that. Give me a specific question that I can work with, and we'll get a lesson on it. Everybody remember Calvin and Hobbes?
Yes.
That was one of my favorite cartoons. Bill Watterson, who produced it, quit drawing it years ago. Now, let's be honest. Calvin pulled all the stuff that we dreamed about pulling, right? He got away with a lot of it. Some of it not so much. But this was a Mother's Day cartoon several years ago that he did, where he comes in and he wakes Mom up and he says, "I made you a Mother's Day card." And she says, "Oh, wow, how sweet of you." She should have known better. "I did it all by myself." "Go ahead and read it." "I was going to buy you a card with hearts of pink and red, but then I thought I'd rather spend the money instead." It's awfully hard to buy things when your allowance is so small. So I guess you're pretty lucky I got you anything at all. Notice his Happy Mother's Day to you. There, I said it. Now I'm done. So how about getting out of bed and cooking breakfast for your son? I'm deeply moved. Did you notice the part about my allowance? Somehow, now if this were my mother, somehow that would come across as a touch sarcastic. But mothers are important to us. This is a lady who's responsible for Mother's Day. She never married, never had any children, Anne Marie Jarvis. She thought we did need a day to honor mothers. And then President Woodrow Wilson, this is his proclamation announcing the second Sunday in May as being Mother's Day. And that's a day we honor moms, and they theoretically at least shouldn't have to cook or anything. I do remember Mom when we were real little, getting her own Mother's Day presents when Dad was in Vietnam and we were this young. It's kind of just the way it goes, I guess. And so we have this as a time of honoring mothers and thinking about them. And we certainly want to magnify motherhood because this morning we're going to look at a time period when things were not that good in Israel. And arguably, we could say the same thing today, and keeping family units, and I'm defining family as the Bible defines it, not two dads, two moms, or any of that sort of nonsense, but I'm talking about how the Bible defines it. And we could argue that today in America, it's like it is in Israel in the sense that there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Half of that statement applies to America. We still have a functioning government. But we can see more and more that people are doing that which is right in their own eyes. If it feels good, do it. I have my truth. You have your truth. But that's not life. That is not honest. There is just truth. There is no such thing as my truth or your truth. We can have differences of opinion, but we can't have a different truth. It's been pouring down rain most of the morning. That's a truth. Now, your truth may be you're lying on a sunny beach in the Caribbean somewhere. Okay? Can't do much about that if that's what you're thinking, and that's above my pay grade to deal with. But let's look at Hannah. Because in the first 2 chapters of 1 Samuel, we see some traits here that define what a God... And these apply not just to mothers, but men, these apply to us too. And these apply to pretty much any Christian. Any of us here face real problems. Because women of faith are going to face real problems. Men of faith are going to face real problems. We've all got real problems. Some of them are minor, and what to me is a minor one, maybe a big one to you. But in this case, we see that real people face real problems. Hannah had a real problem. She couldn't conceive. She had a real problem with an antagonist. And a husband who thought, really, you should just be happy you have me as a husband. If you think about it, that's basically what he told her. We'll look at that. But there are some faithful women in the Bible who did have to deal with fertility issues, and here's some of them that either didn't have them or they had them late in life. And in some cultures, that's taken as a sign, and I think kind of in American culture, we used to think this till we learned more about biology, that if a couple couldn't have children, it was the woman's fault. Something isn't right there, or it's a curse from God. But male children have always been what couples have wanted. And she's no different. She wants a son. She wants to have a son. And the last part of verse 3 indicates here that as they're going into worship, and we see Hophni and Phinehas, the 2 sons of Eli, and there were just a couple of outstanding, great guys that you'd want your daughter to bring home to meet the folks, right? Yeah, I heard that. In fact, no. They were, someone wrote, at best hypocrites, at worst they were evil. But here's what I want you to notice. Did it keep Elkanah from going into worship? No. He didn't care. He's going to worship God. Okay, let's make an application to us. How many times have we known someone who decided, I didn't like that sermon, I'm not going back there as long as he's the preacher? Or, I didn't get my way in the business meeting, I'm not going back. We've all known someone like that, and maybe you've been that person. Or, I just really don't like the youth director, I don't like that family, we're just not going, we're going somewhere else. Now, there was one time in my life when I did leave a congregation and go somewhere else because of a personal issue I was having with somebody. That's another story for another time. But here's my point. You've got to at some point put that aside and still meet with God's people. I know a lot of people who stay on the job for 30 years, even though there's people there they don't like. They can't stand the boss. They can't stand the partner they have to work with. But they stick with the job. But when it comes to problems at church, even though we say it's our most important to us is our church and our God and this sort of thing, we tend to kind of walk a little quicker from church, don't we? So let's put aside whatever our personal issues are, and let's worship God. Elkanah could have said, it's just too far to travel. Why should I bother going in? And remember, too, that in those days, without air-conditioned or climate-controlled cars, going more than a few miles was quite a trip. Average wagon train going across the prairie made about 50 miles a day. We can do that in an hour or a little bit less. But he's also showing us of a devoted heart, devoted to the Lord, also devoted to his wife. He loves Hannah. The scriptures tell us that. There's no real doubt about that. You could say she's the favorite of the two. But here's the problem. He's got a divided family. And we're seeing more of this. There are some offshoots of the Mormon church out west that still practice polygamy, always have. And I think that's going to become the next legal battle on the definition of marriage. To be able to have multiple spouses. And all kidding and jokes about nagging and having that many wives or husbands aside, it's not God's plan. The Bible does not endorse polygamy. It records it. But remember, recording something is not an endorsement of something. Just means you're putting it down. It happened. If I'm writing about, I minored in history and I taught history. When we're talking about American history in the 19th century, we have to talk about slavery. Does that mean I'm endorsing it? No. It happened. Coming into the 20th century, if we're going to talk about the first half, we got to talk about the Second World War. Got to talk about the Holocaust. Am I endorsing that? Of course not. It happened. It's recorded. We got to talk about it. Polygamy happened in the Bible. We recorded it. We have to talk about it sometimes. It's not that we are approving of it or anything. But here we see the character and personality of Penny. I don't know how to pronounce these names either. Can we just call her Penny and just call it good? Is that okay with everyone? We'll just call her Penny. But notice she couldn't be thankful for what she had. This is like the little kid on the block who gets a brand new bicycle and has to go and rub all the other kids' noses. Hey, look, I got a new bicycle. You got that little thing over there. Or somebody who gets a new car. Anything that you don't have, they've got to come and make a big production out of it. That's what she's doing. And it's not just a little bit of kidding. Some people might, I get a new car and say, oh, you're still driving that jalopy. And we rib each other and kid each other about it. This is serious. This is someone who is really trying to inflict emotional pain. Is really just being mean. Provoke means to cause her thunder. She wants her to blow her top. We all know people that way. You have relatives, co-workers, friends, whatever, and that's what they like to do. They just like to walk in the room, and you want to go the other way, because you know they're just coming in to start something. You know they're just going to come over and try and embarrass you. That's what she was doing. That's what she was doing to Hannah. She was just trying to embarrass her, trying to just make her feel bad, and just dump all over her. I've got kids, and you don't. Ha, ha, ha. That's basically what she's doing. She was irritating her, stirring her up inwardly. Just looking, itching for a fight. Itching for Hannah to blow up and say something back at her. But she kept her cool. How did she do that? Well, because she's got a good, solid prayer life. Stop and think a minute. And guys too, not just mothers, but everybody. How's your prayer life? Now, I had a friend once, years ago, who said that if he came across a Christian who was generally a penny, Peninnah, however you want to pronounce it, was like her, he would typically ask, how's your prayer life? And you know what he found out? They either didn't have one or they had a very sporadic one. So prayer life can go a long way towards setting our mood and setting our mindset and setting our general disposition. But you notice Hannah, she went to God in prayer with her problems. She didn't lash out at people around her. She probably, and under other circumstances without prayer, she might very well have taken a swing at her antagonist. Who knows? But she went to God in prayer. And sometimes God will use problems to get our attention and to teach us lessons, doesn't he? What are the lessons that stick with us? Aren't they the hardest ones? How many of us bought a car that turned out to be a lemon and we had to put hundreds or thousands of dollars into it? How about a house? You sign on for that 30-year mortgage and then find out, I paid $100,000 for the house, but I've got to pay another $20,000 or $25,000 on all these things that went wrong with it right away. And we learn lessons like that. Rushed into big decisions and that just blew up in our faces. God can use those to get our attention and teach us lessons. Or maybe going through what Hannah went through. Something like that can be a way of God getting our attention. Kind of like you see here from NCIS with Gibbs coming up to give McGee a Gibbs slap in the back of the head. Sometimes God will do that. Sometimes it's with his hand. Sometimes it might be a 2x4 to get our attention. And our problem should drive us to prayer. And, I'm no different than anybody else. There are times I get in a jam, I got a problem, but I don't take it to God in prayer. I might just go storming out of the room. I might, call Debbie and complain to her or complain to someone else. But when we got a problem, it should cause us to go to God in prayer. Hannah set us a really good example there. She went to God in prayer with this, wanting a son. And notice she makes a vow that if you give me a son, he'll be dedicated to the Lord's service his life, for his entire life. Now, how many of us have made promises like that and then we didn't keep them? How many of us have made little promises that we didn't keep? How many of us maybe have made promises we had no intention of keeping? But we're going to see here that she kept this promise. It was her intention. And I have no doubt that it caused her a lot of pain to give her son over to the Lord and over to Eli. But she did it. She carried through with what she promised. That's what any godly, honest, honorable person would do. Whether you're male, female, mother, father, whatever. That is what you're going to do. She kept praying to the Lord. She kept repeating this request. She even made it in tears. She didn't just go in and pray a canned prayer like some people recite off what's commonly called the Lord's Prayer or some other prayer where we just recite it by rote. She was honestly really torn up about this. She really honestly wanted to have a son. Go to God in prayer. If you need to do a study on prayer, here, Stormy or Martian has written a lot on prayer. Bob Russell has written a lot on prayer, and there's a lot of other books on prayer that have been written. The Power of a Praying Wife, a Praying Husband. Go in there, take what you can use. If you can't use anything out of it, that's fine. But study on prayer. We might even do a series on it here coming up. I've got some material that I've been putting together and looking at, just also based on some things I've been just reading and studying in my own study time. But after spending time in prayer, you notice her face was no longer sad. She left her concerns with the Lord. There was a song I used to hear many, many years ago on the radio. I can't even tell you who did it or the whole song. I just remember there was a part of the song that said, take your troubles to the Lord and leave them there. And when you see, like for instance, Peter in 1 Peter 3, when he says, cast your troubles on the Lord, the word there in the original language is like a fisherman casting his line. He wants it to get it out there as far as he can. Or somebody, say, throwing a ball, quarterback, throwing the long bump. Any way you want to look at it, you're throwing it, casting it. You're throwing it a long ways, and you don't want it back. Well, you might want that fishing line back. But the idea is you are giving it over to God, and, okay, God, deal with it. This is something I just want you to deal with. And you have to keep in mind, too, that when you give it to God and say, here, deal with it, He might not deal with it the way you want Him to, or the way you expect Him to. You got to keep that in mind, too. And then women of faith are going to keep promises. Men of faith, you're going to keep your promises too. Anyone who's honest, honorable, they're going to keep their promises. Look at verses 21 to 28. She dedicated herself to her child, nurturing him, and then she will take him and present him before the Lord, and he will live there always. She knew that day was going to come. She knew she was going to have to go and present him to the Lord, but she really took the time and cherished all the time with him that she had with him. But many people make promises only to forget them as time passes. If you think about it, your baptism is a promise to God that you're going to live faithfully. Just like your marriage vows are a promise to your spouse, you're going to live faithfully. And how many of us have baptized people, or we watch someone come up and get baptized, and we see them maybe 1 or 2 Sundays and we never see them again? Before you get married, you got to count the cost and make sure, is this someone I want to live with for the next 40, 50, 60, 70 years? Okay, before I get baptized, is this a commitment that I really want to make? This is not just a ceremony that I'm going through or a church ritual that I'm going through. This is something God said to do, to become a Christian and put my name in the book of life. So am I really going to take that serious? That's why I don't really push teenagers to get baptized at 15, 16 years old. How many of us would be excited if our 15-year-old came home and said, hey, I found the person I'm going to marry? Or a 12-year-old. Some 12-year-olds might be ready. But whenever I get someone that young, I don't want to study with them. I want to talk to their parents about it too. Do they understand the commitment that goes into this? Just like when you're getting married, there is a commitment. She is fully intending to keep her promise to the Lord. She knows that this child is really the Lord's. I'm taking care of him for the Lord. Parents, your children, remember, are an heritage of the Lord. The fruit of the womb. The fruit of the womb is his blessing. Children are a gift from. They exasperate us sometimes. They try our patience. They push our buttons. But they're a gift from the Lord. We always, as parents, we always need to remember that. Hannah dedicated herself and her child to the Lord. She gave herself to the Lord, which made it easier, not easy necessarily, but easier to give her child up to the Lord when the time came. And she knew she had to keep that promise to God to give her son to him. Mothers, do you pray for your children, your grandchildren? Fathers, are you praying for your children and your grandchildren? My biggest concern as I'm raising my daughter up is that she does become a Christian someday. As long as that happens, quite frankly, I could die a happy man. As long as she is there, is a Christian, as her name is in the Lamb's Book of Life. Here's a glimpse of it. This is out of Deuteronomy. These commandments that I have given you today are to be in your hearts. It means it be in our minds, in our conscience. Impress them upon your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Talk about them. I would add a little corollary to this. Talk about them in a positive way. You know, I haven't been a preacher all my life. And before I got into full-time preaching, I went out with people or was at social functionings, and the item on the menu was roast preacher or roast elder. And I hear adults, and their kids are here within earshot, and they're talking very negatively about the preacher, the elders, the church. And I have known people that never had a good thing to say about their preacher or about their elders. And then their kids get up to teenagers, and do I have to go to the youth group? Mom, why do we have to go to church? It's boring, and you don't like the preacher anyway. And then their kids get to be 18, they go off to college, they join the army, they do whatever, and get into their 20s, and they quit going to church, and the parents say, I can't figure out why. We never missed a Sunday. They were in the youth group. What are you saying about church when you're not here? I mean, I'm not saying to be all, Gomer Pyle, Pollyanna, well, golly, it's all good. No, because churches have their problems. Members don't always get along. But do you talk about the positive? Yeah, that preacher, he did have a good lesson today. Or do you talk to them about it? What did he say about this or that? What's going on in your Sunday school class? We were at a church one time. It was about 300 members, had a youth group. Some things happened, and the parents had no idea what the youth minister was teaching. And they got very concerned when they found out some of the material he was using. Ask questions. Talk to your kids. When it comes Sunday, don't just, I guess we got to go to church, but tell them, no, we get to go. When my daughter, when we're going out for ice cream, how do you think we approach it? Amelia, come on, we have to go out for ice cream. Or come on, we're going for ice cream. Wait, where'd she go? She's already in the car. You see the level of excitement. Show some interest. Be positive about it. And I really believe just in general, if we Christians would show some more excitement and some more actual interest in our Christianity, I think we'd have a lot better, easier time getting people in and getting people to talk about it and getting Bible studies. Rather than it's just someplace we go to hear a lecture and sing a few songs. We've got to show that excitement. We've got to show it to our kids and to others. And then we have to be thankful to God. I really appreciate what Clyde said this morning. There are times we just need to say thanks to God. And she was thrilled to be able to parent a prophet. How many of you would be excited if your son said, I decided I want to preach? I want to go to the mission field. I know a lot of parents who would talk their kids out of it for various and sundry reasons. But that might also be why 50 years ago we were, I think, the third or fourth largest religious group in America and one of the fastest growing, to where we're, I think, 10th or 11th now and don't show a whole lot of growth. Encourage our young men to grow up. They don't necessarily have to do it full time, but encourage them to preach, to teach. You just fill in sometimes. Encourage your daughters to seek out Christian men to marry, men who want to be elders and deacons and want to lead in the church. We're not going to have prophets like they had back then, but we do have what I would call the modern equivalent, the preachers, the teachers. We need them. She overlooks the gift and gives praise to the giver. Thank you, God, for this son. I'm only going to have him a short time before I turn him over and dedicate him to your service. But she was thankful for it. It wasn't, oh, you mean I only get him for 2 years, 3 years? I'm only going to get him while he's growing up and I have to change his diapers and I don't get to see him after that? She was thankful to God for what she had. Thankful to God that she did get a son. She is an example of a woman of faith and of thanksgiving and of praise. There's nothing wrong with coming up and saying, well, God answered this prayer for me. I got a job. I want to thank God that I've got this new job, or I've got this good test result back from the doctor, or whatever it is. She had praise. She had a grateful heart. And one of the lessons we can learn from this is that each of us needs to be growing in our own relationship with God. You want your kids to learn about God? What do you talk about at home? What do you read at home? Do you even read to them? Do you read the Bible with them? Do you read books about the Bible with them? It's got to be that you show them that God is first in your life, that God is most important to you if you want God to be most important to them. If you want your kids brought up in a Christian home, make sure Christ is in your home and in your heart. If he is, you'll spend the rest of your life giving your children back to the Lord. Remember, they belong to him anyway. God wants us to raise them up properly, as defined in Scripture. So this morning, what's your life like with the Lord, your Christian walk? That's what we're here for, Mother's Day, any day of the year, to help you in that walk. And if we can help you, we'll stand in a moment and sing. If you would like to publicly ask us for prayers, that's fine. If you want to talk to me about it privately, that's fine. If you're not a Christian, this is the opportunity to be baptized into Christ. Or I'll talk to you about it if you got questions. Whatever, if you have a need you'd like to share with us, let us know as together we stand and as we sing.